fun. To be able to do that. It's hard dealing with it.
There we go.
Yes, it is.
Must have been the right direction.
You just have to smile and grin and bear it. And there's only so many people. There's
How many engineers does it take to turn on the microphone?
And I'm not one of them.
I'm not either.
Not as
After
much
a
as
while,
it takes
I
more
get
planners.
I have a tendency to say what I think.
Me too. That usually gets me in trouble. But I will say this.
So
I
as
made
you're
it for 6
representing
months
crazy
without getting in
people,
trouble. Oh, Cracker Barrel. That makes sense.
I think we will get started, and Jennifer will be here shortly. And I'd just like to call this meeting to order. The Thursday, September 15th,
Brian,
Transportation
I'm
Advisory
sorry, is your
Committee.
mic on?
What's that?
Is your mic on?
Yes.
Did you push the button? Maybe you just need to pull it closer to yourself. We're not recording you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Welcome to the Thursday, September 15th, 2016 Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. We have a quorum. And I'd just like to start by, is that still? Thanks. Just like to start with discussions, actually introductions. Victoria, please start.
Victoria Chavez, El Paso County.
Wade Burkholder, managing London City of Woodland Park. Mike Snow, CDOT.
Mighty Pettit, CDOT.
Craig Gasper, PPACG.
Bob Radosevich, Town of Palmer Lake. Rick Arfin, Fort Carson.
Aaron Horsemeyer, Shreveport Air Force Base.
Dwayne Greenwood, City of Fountain. Brian Vituli, City of Colorado Springs, Mountain Metro Transit. And I believe there's one item that's been requested to add to the agenda, and that's the CDOT priority project list. And Craig,
New item
do you know
number
the
10?
background of this?
The board did not take action on it, and there was discussion at the TAC last month about the project description that was included in the CDOT list about it being managed lanes specifically and not the full breadth of the PEL. And so talking with Jennifer, she'd like to add it as an item for more discussion and possible recommendation.
Okay. So could we add that as new item 10?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Go ahead. I'll second you.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. All right. Item 3, public comments. Are there any public comments from the members here or anybody in the audience? Seeing none. Item 4, approval of the August 18th, 2016 meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review?
I'll move approval.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Item 5, Board of Directors report from the September board meeting.
I will start. If anybody has additional detail to add in, please feel free. The board did release the public participation plan, the Title VI plan, and the EJ plan for 45-day public comments. So you'll be seeing that in 2 months. We'll probably be bringing interim comments if we get any back to you for next month, but actual action will be in 2 months. They also discussed the CDOT 10-year priority project list, and There was no tip amendment, so it was pretty transportation light agenda. CDOT gave a briefing on status of some of the projects Cimarron moving to Phase 2 in October, which will be a big shift. There's a big pour going on now. And other than that, I can't think of too much else that they talked about.
Craig, just a quick question. Sorry, I wasn't there yesterday, and I think you said it. So the public participation plan and the Title VI plan,
And the
on the
EG plan.
agenda, they said review or approve, I think, right? But
Yeah, it was just released for.
It's out for a 30-day
Oh, actually, it's
public
45. They put them all three out for 45 day.
okay, all right.
So,
So we'll see.
yep.
We won't see these again until
Well, you'll see.
2 months.
We'll bring
right?
back interim comments if we get any between
Okay.
now. But then in October, you'll see interim comments, whatever we get.
Okay.
And then in November, it'll be bringing back to you for approval.
Okay, all right. All right. Anything else? All right, thank you. Well, our esteemed chair is here, so I will cede the gavel.
Thank you. And I just want to thank City of Colorado Springs for all their lovely work on the streets, which has put me into construction.
Oh, yes.
Delays,
All of our
so-
east-west corridors.
Thank you.
Still have construction delay.
So, thank you. So, item number 6, I think tip amendment number 3, Kevin? So review and recommend item?
Had the easy parts.
Hello, everyone. Kevin Reyes, PPACG. Today, we're going to be going over tip amendment number 3 for the 2017-2022 tip. It comes in 2 different parts, and both of them are coming to us from CDOT. The first part is for the State Highway 83 and County Road 404 East Palmer Divide Avenue project. CDOT has received HSIP funding for this project, and it's a safety project. They're going to be building a roundabout and fix the roadway grade for sight distance at this location. So they're going to be receiving $150,000 for design in fiscal year 2017 and $1.6 million for construction in fiscal year 2018. So that's the first project. The second project, also from CDOT, is for the Woodman Park and Ride location. CDOT has informed us that this location is not adequately serving on-site pickup and drop-off activity, and also the parking lot is not large enough for the demand that it's receiving. And they're actually anticipating adding bus staying service to this park and ride by this coming fall. And so they're expecting that there's going to be even more traffic there. So what they're proposing is, or they've received is SB 228 funds to open up a right-of-way phase to begin looking at options for a replacement site for a different park and ride location. They've received $3 million for that process. So those are the two items we have for amendment number 3 this month. Is there any questions on that? Yes, Wendy?
Kevin, there's one more that Dave Watt was supposed to be here to talk about.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Okay. Did I get an email for that one? I don't.
No,
Okay.
It's going to have to be a walk-on because we discussed it yesterday at the board meeting.
Oh, you did? Okay.
So,
You want to present it, or?
I'll start it. So, as I mentioned at the board yesterday, the High Performance Toll Enterprise is funding the PEL in Douglas County now. As a result, they don't really need all the RPP money that we sent them for the PEL, so $500,000 is coming back. Because the $1 million that we sent them came off of the US 24 West Corridor, Region 2 thought it would be good for the $500,000 that come back to go back to US 24 West also. And what they propose is $100,000 for beautification, I don't know what you call it, ornamental enhancement of the Rainbow Falls Bridge, and $400,000 to do design of 31st or 30th, some intersections.
31st.
31st and 24 West, and maybe 21st. There was something there. And so to put the $400,000 into design on that, and then $100,000 of it into the Rainbow Falls Bridge. But we have no information, so.
Oh, and I understand, just because I'm a little bit, know a little bit about the Rainbow Falls one. CDOT had looked at painting the bridge because it has a lot of graffiti, but the bridge is, that would cost like $500,000. So what they're going to be doing is working with our Parks Department in El Paso County to look at an alternative to that, that possibly could be funded with either donations. They're working with some entities out there. So, I mean, at least that's what I know about the $100,000.
What we lack detail, and I don't know the criticality of, well, I know the design projects aren't critical, I mean, if they wait a month, but I don't know the criticality of the Rainbow Falls. Is anyone aware of how critical it is to go to the board in October?
Do you want project criticality? Do you want personal opinion?
Ooh.
Which one matters to this group?
Wasn't there discussion of that bridge not being long-term?
Well, there's been some discussion of that bridge being taken out, but that would be a major change to the, there was some discussion, but that would be a major change to the corridor, and that's not just a simple thing.
No.
And CDOT just spent how much money replacing all the deck?
Right.
I mean, Wendy, you probably can comment on that.
Absolutely. So what the urgency for this process is for the $100,000 is that Commissioner Clark is pushing this along. She would like to see that this process be put into action before she leaves office, because she's afraid that we won't follow through with it when she's gone, is my understanding. I don't know that we're going to be able to do exactly as she's hoping we can, because the bridge is on the historic register, and so that means you can't just paint it the way that she's hoping we could. And it's federal money, and we have to, if we're going to give this project money, the money has got to be changed from federal money to state money. And so without Karen, and I haven't had the opportunity to talk to Karen, because Karen has been in Denver all week working with the folks there to be able to get the funding issue secured for our new building, and the Transportation Commission is meeting this week. So I probably won't see Karen until maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday at the very soonest. So with that being said, I don't know what the process is going to be for changing the color of that money, but I know that Dave was very interested in making sure that it went to the board for final action as a TIP amendment in October. So that's why we brought it up here today. But I don't even know that that's realistic and that it's doable, because I don't know that we have all the pieces and parts to be able to take it and know that we can actually move it and do what we are being asked of.
So we might be jumping the gun a little bit.
Exactly. My hope was that we could have conversation today, bring this as an information item, and then next month, after we had a chance to work all the issues out, that we bring it back as a full TIP amendment in writing and so forth and so on, like we normally do. And we don't do walk-ons without the person that needs to be here to give us the information. So that would be my hope. And since he's not here, I don't know what to say. And I wasn't at the meeting that the city-county coordination meeting, because I was working on the freight.
Yeah.
Craig, this is something that CDOT could actually put on and take to the board without our recommendation, though.
The board generally wants the TAC and CAC.
Sure.
I mean, they could, yeah. So,
So what,
If there's something critical.
right.
did you have, were either one of you, Victoria or Jennifer, at the meeting? Do you have anything to add that might help us make a
What
decision?
meeting?
The
The
city
board
county
meeting.
coordinating meeting. I was there, and
I was
that-
there, I don't even remember, but I wasn't there for the whole time either, because I had to leave for a meeting.
Yeah, and we covered much more detail today than we covered there at that
Okay,
meeting.
all right. So,
But I do know that none of the county officials were there at the meeting, because
Right.
they're out in Washington, so.
So I think we discussed it. I don't know, it's the tax pleasure, but it'd be hard to do an amendment having
Well, I
No
knew
way.
that Dave was really trying to get started on the design for the other projects, which is probably more,
So,
But we have money in those other projects, so this would just be
Adding
adding it
to it.
back
Okay.
in. So he's not at a loss for being able to move forward with the other projects on 21st and 31st if we had to wait 30 days, so.
So there's already a Manitou Bridge project, right? Not Manitou, Rainbow Falls project, right?
yeah.
So this could be an administrative amendment?
No.
Nope.
No?
Adds federal money or state money, yeah, either one.
The Rainbow Falls project is done, per se, so what would happen with this money is it would be a check that's written to the county. It would not go into a project that we have
Well, I
going.
don't think that that's yet been determined as far as where it's going to go and how that's going to really be handled. I think the point was is just to recognize that there's an issue there as far as, because the CDOT was considering painting the bridge, but recognizing that that is $500,000, that's not there. And so that there was this different option to look at a different option. And
So that's what I was told. I was told that we were writing a check to the county and we were walking away from it. That's what I was told. $100,000.
Sounds like we should.
It seems like the county has a different view.
Sounds like a discussion item today and should be acted on later.
I agree, totally.
And ultimately, it could go straight to the board as well, so.
Yeah.
There's some
It's a
behind.
critical path.
They'll get to decide that issue, not us anyway, so, absolutely. So I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
So strike that, just the two items, right?
Two items.
Yeah.
So I'll move approval of the two items, move approval for the two items, and recommend CDOT take item 3 to the board without a TAC recommendation due to the timing.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Designation of critical urban freight corridors. Ken, review and recommend item.
Good afternoon, Ken Prather, PPACG. This item has been before you in the last 2 months. We're ready now, hopefully, to make a recommendation on a critical urban freight corridor. The only change that I need to point out to you, if you go to the draft PPACG freight corridors table that's attached in your packet.
One Jennifer sent, or?
No, the one that was, I've got it kind of out of sequence here. It's attachment number 1 in your packet. Just a half-page table has our projects listed. The only correction on that is that the Charter Oak Ranch Road length should be 0.6 miles instead of 1.2. A more careful review of the Colorado Springs urbanized area basically cuts that project in half. So 0.65 actually is within the critical, is in the urbanized area, and the rest of it is in the outside, so it would be designated by CDOT as a critical rural freight corridor if it's going to receive that designation. So we can only designate the part inside the urbanized area. CDOT is still moving forward with its preference of only designating corridors that have projects programmed in 2016 or 2017. Jennifer did forward to you an email that we got from CDOT after the packet went out. CDOT listed all of their urban and rural draft corridors in Region 2. Ours were included. They also showed the rural ones. In their table, they didn't there's supposed to be a cursor there. There it is. That's the wrong one. There it is. They don't indicate the year, they indicate a priority over on the right-hand side of priority 1 or 2. And I don't know the definition or of that tier structure that they're using. But I also have not heard of anything that's scheduled in those projects for 2016 or 17. So I think that the recommendation that I would make is that we still use the Charter Oak Ranch Road as the only project programmed in 2016 and 17. That we use that to be designated as a critical urban freight corridor. And then next year, after CDOT develops the methodology and revises its statewide freight plan, and we know what the criteria would be, then we can come back and pick these other corridors or maybe additional corridors based on their criteria and methodology, where we can come forward with the strongest application. That is the concern of the Community Advisory Committee, that right now we don't have much of a justification for a competitive basis as to why any of these corridors are being recommended. And personally, I would hate to select a bunch of these and then 6 months from now come back and say, well, we want to take them off the list because other corridors and projects will compete better. So it makes sense to me just to do Charter Oak Ranch Road at this time. Finish it out for the statewide. Remember, there's a statewide cap of 60.35 miles, I think it is, centerline miles for critical urban. 80. Yeah, CDOT, Dr. Cog had 60. Okay.
Michael, chance of getting Charter Oak Ranch Road, the other 0.6 miles of it onto the rural side?
I wouldn't count on it. Not real soon. Oh, you mean to add, I'm sorry. Probably I had a different question from you. I thought you were talking about getting it into the Justin. I can't answer whether, I mean, this is all a statewide conversation, so how it compares to everything else, I haven't even looked at it myself, and the conversation about how do we measure them against one another is.
We included the whole length, regardless of whether it was in the urban versus the.
Region 2 has it included
we
all
have
in
the
their,
whole length included.
in their
Already,
list.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
The only 0.6 of it is part of urbanizing.
And the other 0.6 is in there, but
it's in rural.
But it's
Right.
rural.
Yeah, and
So is this list up on the screen, the state's list?
This is the state's list, and they're saying here,
it's
urban.
all urban. So they
Right.
haven't, yeah.
It hasn't been adjusted.
Isn't it just,
Okay. The only other thing I'd say,
is it
just
just region 2?
Yeah, that's.
This is just the Region 2.
Just Region 2.
It's just recent too, but, okay, show me where Charter Oak is.
right there at the bottom,
The last of
It's row 7 in the spreadsheet.
row 7. I would just say.
Oh, 85, okay, I got confused there with 85 being
Yeah,
Charter Oak.
you got to look over in the description.
Because it, where Santa Fe is really.
Is 85.
85 goes all the way to Charter Oak.
They also say it's in Colorado Springs. I believe it's in Fountain.
That's in Fountain.
Well,
You want the road, Dwayne, do you want to have that conversation now?
it's in unincorporated El Paso County and.
The
Maybe that's the Colorado Springs urban.
Highway
area.
85 part is in the city of Fountain.
Yeah.
The Charter Oak Ranch portion's in the county.
And I would just say, I don't know about, if the local road designation at the bottom means it's not a CDOT road, but it's now classified as a collector.
I got no
Yeah.
explanation
Okay,
for the
we'll
spreadsheet. What you
provide
see is
some
what I
input to
know.
CDOT directly then.
And the westerly extension is Fort Carson.
Yeah.
The project itself starts from that intersection of 85 and Charter Oak, so it's just Charter
No.
Oak Ranch Road?
It goes
Or
from
it's
the,
from 25,
it's
so
from
it's-
the interstate interchange to,
Okay.
So it's called Santa Fe Avenue, but it's
So
really
here's-
87 because the CDOT, if you look at your CDOT road book, it goes all the way to that intersection.
Starts on Monday and then Sunday. That's what's throwing me
This is the boundary here of the urban area.
Anyway,
All right, I'll move approval of Charter Oak Ranch Road project, the whole 9 yards of it, being our number one.
1.6 mile, not 9 yards.
6 miles.
We can't designate it.
Be designated as our number one critical freight priority due to project readiness for the CAC.
Okay. But we can't designate the whole corridor. We can only designate that portion within the urban boundary.
Well, actually, to be clear, you can recommend urban and rural. It's just specific that the TMA MPO must, recommend their rural portion. So still, as an organization, communicate with CDOT, communicate with
Sure.
Region 2.
Okay.
Let us know what your rural ones are too. It doesn't have to come from Central Front Range. It doesn't have to come from,
Thank you, Mike.
it can come anywhere, really.
Yes. So I'd like to designate the whole thing, half of it being urban, half of it being rural, and move approval as such.
And if it's a reason research not being higher because of the
Project
limited dog.
readiness.
Isn't research designed? Research powers?
research powers?
I don't know.
No, they were just having a scoping meeting just the other, 2 weeks ago.
Well, we're already almost to 90%. Thank you.
Their first and second, further discussion?
So how much money is available statewide again?
15.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
First and second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
2019 to 2024 TIP program, or Transportation Improvement Program, a discussion item. Kevin?
Hello again, Kevin Reyes, PPACG. So last month I announced that we're getting ready to start our 2019-2024 Transportation Improvement Program. And as part of that, I brought some potential TIP policies last month to both the TAC and the CAC for discussion, just to kind of get us on the same page. So let's see here. We got a lot of good feedback last time, and I wanted to bring it back again this time for further discussion. And also in your memo, if you look at attachment number 2, we had a request from the TAC to include PPACG's current and old TIP policies that were recommended by that were approved by the board. So I have those in there for your reference as well. But for the purposes of today, I just want to focus on the 2 policies that we discussed last time. And we'll go ahead and start with the first one here. So if you remember, the first one on the memo is projects submitted to the 2019-2024 TIP must come from the long-range transportation plan. So unfortunately, Aaron Busto is not here, but we did have him mention last time that there's performance measures that are required now in the long-range transportation plan. So if you look at your memo, the pros and the cons are the same, but we added one additional pro to this policy, which is the first one, which says this policy would ensure that PPACG is conforming to the congressionally mandated performance-based measures required in the FAST Act. So we briefly touched on this last time, but I wanted to go into this in a little bit more depth this time. Let me just get to the attachment here. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. So again, this was brought up by Aaron Busto last time from FHWA, but again, I want to go into a little bit more depth. So attachment number 1 in your memo, I created kind of an outline of FHWA's logic for this new rule. So the bold part is my own writing, and then the italicized gray part is the direct quote from their website. So I'll quickly go through this really fast. So FHWA's performance measurement regulations, number 1 basically says MPOs are tasked with developing long-range transportation plans that must cover a period of at least 20 years and cover both short and long-range planning. So that's basically saying that's what PPACG is supposed to do. Second part says that FHWA states that the TIP shall be consistent with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. They've always used the word consistent in the past, but this time it's a little bit different because they're now tying performance-based measures to TIPs. So it gives consistent a little bit more structure that goes along with it. So I'll get into that right now with point number 3, which says that FHWA states that long-range transportation plans must be performance-driven and outcome-based. So our previous 2040 long-range transportation plan has performance measures in it to basically measure performance to show that we're achieving our goals. And then number 4 says that the TIP must make progress toward achieving the performance targets, which goes back to providing some structure to the word consistent. We have to show that the TIP is making progress towards those performance targets to show that we're making progress towards our goals. And then point number 5 just basically gives the logic, and it says that the performance-based approach by FHWA ensures that the TIP implements the national goals and the long-range transportation plan. So conclusion from this is basically FHWA's performance measures are holding PPACG a little bit more accountable now to make sure that the TIP actually implements the long-range transportation plan. And I guess that would be kind of the point of them doing that, because the federal money that PPACG receives is really meant for planning. It's not meant so much for emergencies or a change in priorities. And so I'll give you an example. If a major corridor was washed out today in our region and we needed to pay for it tomorrow or get it started to fix next week, it wouldn't really make much sense to get that funding through the TIP, since we do a call for projects every 2 years. So if we tried to get a major corridor funded through the next TIP, it wouldn't get funding until 2022. So there's other funding sources for those types of emergencies. So that's one other thing that we changed in your memo. Actually, if you look at the section for cons for this policy, we changed the wording to perceived lack of flexibility for emergencies and perceived limited flexibility to respond to changing needs. Again, because this money is really meant for planning. It's not really meant for a change in priorities. But with that being said, the board is still able to make amendments to change projects if that needs to happen as well. So that's the first policy. I wanted to go into FHWA's performance measures a little bit more in depth. Hopefully that gives you a better understanding of that. Do you guys want to? I think we'll discuss this one first, and then I'll get to the second one. I'm sure you guys have some stuff to say about this first policy.
Any thoughts from anybody? Bueller?
I'd just like to say, I agree. I like this, but if there is some type of change in direction, or local government's needs change very rapidly from when projects were included in the long-range plan to the time they went go into the TIP, that there is a mechanism to address those needs, right, through a waiver, I believe.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, that's a board can always do a waiver if that needs to happen. But again, it comes down to it takes so long to get this funding used that if you have a major corridor that's washed out, you need to get it fixed next week. It would take several years to get that funding. So, does that answer your question?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just kind of thinking through this. You have an emergency situation. Theoretically, you have emergency funding to take care of it, but you may not, right? So you hope to. That said, the policy is that the TIP shall make progress towards. I don't know if I've ever seen anything that says ye shall only select the projects that have the greatest progress towards any performance measure. And so that's one way to think about it. Two, if you have an emergency situation, I think you can now say, well, we have a road where that's washed out. And obviously, repairing it is certainly going to help your performance target, even though you might have measured 2 years ago. And everybody follow where I'm going with that? I mean, I think if a road is gone, it certainly is an impact, a negative impact to some performance measures. So you need to fix it. So you can prioritize it just as well as any other that you hadn't considered before because you didn't have that flood yet. You didn't have that gigantic semi run into the bridge or something.
But that wouldn't be part of a normal TIP process, unless it's a well-scheduled disaster.
But you still,
Well, I agree with Michael.
My
Thank
point
you,
is, it's
Michael.
not as constrained, I don't believe it's as constraining as it might seem for those emergency situations.
Tim has some time in 2 years right on your calendar for an emergency.
It's actually 26 months. So.
Okay.
Technically, we're up to another one if you want to look at how many we have in this area for presidentially disasters. We should be having another one any minute.
Overdue.
We're overdue for the big earthquake and the whole front range stuff.
And I believe the federal regulations also require that planning be continuous and not just a one-stop shop that has a drop-dead date that doesn't change after that. It's a continuous and collaborative process. And so what we did last time of coming up with a consensus-based negotiated approach to a list of projects that benefited the region, seems to be a continuous and collaborative process that I actually commend us on rather than taking a strict, non-flexible approach, and it is more than just a perceived inflexibility. It is an inflexibility, and it puts an extra burden on local governments to have this policy. So those are my thoughts.
Tim?
So my thought is, so the Pikes Peak region has a lot of non-federal resources available to ourselves, like PPRTA. City has 2C and a few other things. What I've noticed, or what I feel, a lot of times when we've gone for TIP projects or an update to projects that aren't in the long-range plan, is to supplement some funds where we're short. And it's using the best. I think we're using the money to our best ability. So I think that flexibility is good in that sense. Otherwise, the projects wouldn't get done. Like our 30th Street, we wouldn't get the drainage facilities along with the overlay, and then the length or the longevity of that overlay is a lot less. So I just think that we need to keep that in mind. We need that flexibility, and we do when we're kind of scoping and structuring this next tip.
I also agree with you.
One of the things, and I said this to Craig after the meeting last time, and thought about it after the fact, but I know that there's some concern that some of the projects that we're picking, a lot of them were not in the long-range transportation plan. So one of my questions was, does that mean our projects that we're picking are bad, or maybe the projects that are in the long-range transportation plan to begin with maybe don't encompass all of our priorities in the region. So, I mean, there's two ways to look at that issue. One thing that I spoke with, so I'll leave that at that, but another thought that I spoke with Craig is that yesterday, and something I've been thinking about personally for the region is one of the big priorities in the FAST Act is safety. And so I'd like to look a little broader about that priority in safety, because right now although we incorporate it into our projects, that's not one of the highest priorities for our funding. So that might be something that we may want to consider and look at differently. A lot of our projects that are in the long-range transportation plan are really, because they're fiscally constrained, a lot of it is our EA cleared corridors, and that's eating up a big chunk of it because so that's the third point, we're not getting a lot of funding for those larger CDOT projects. So in some respects, that constrains us as locals because then that takes up a large chunk, and then we have less money in that fiscally constrained plan. So I think that there are a lot of factors that are there that, I mean, I understand the concern that it should be in the long-range transportation plan, but there are many factors that constrain it from not being in there, so. But just a few thoughts.
Yeah, see, that's why you're hogging all the money.
Well, because you want it in the fiscally constrained plan, because it's a
otherwise you
clear.
can't do anything.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
picking on
clear
you.
DA, but, yeah. Anyway, not a bad thing, but we're just not, in my opinion, getting as much funding as we should for some of those corridors. Anyway, any other thoughts? This is a discussion item.
The problem is that I can't give you money for something that we don't have to give you, so that's the biggest issue right there. And with the direction that we have in place now with Governor Hickenlooper and our executive management out of Denver, they're putting money into the assets. So it's not that there isn't money coming to the region for some of those corridors. They're just not necessarily building out the EA direction. We're putting a Band-Aid on the artery, basically.
And I'm not trying to talk badly about CDOT, but, I mean, we need to recognize that those EAs and those cleared ones, which is a good thing that we have, I think, are eating up a lot of those.
And it
That's
has.
because we never got all of our seventh pop money, so. it's
$689 million we're short yet from the original list.
And we
roughly.
understand that totally, honestly. I mean, we have beat that horse real well in this 10-year development process, so that it went forward with your cleared corridors on it. So it hasn't gone unnoticed, honestly. And our management in the region is well aware of what needs to happen. So you have that support. It's not going on deaf ears.
Any other further discussion about that item? Because I know you have another item.
So what are the next steps after this?
For getting this, for the policies, or?
Yeah.
Well, I think seeing how today goes, we can bring this back for discussion again next month, or a recommendation if we want to do something like that. I did want to keep it as a discussion again today because there was a request for seeing our current policies and old policies. So if someone wanted to look at those over the next few weeks, we can bring those up for next month as well. If we wanted to bring up other policy issues. So, yeah, we got the good thing is we got a pretty early start on this tip, so we have time to have more discussions if we need.
So the part that I'd be curious is, last time we had the project, was it scoring a rating, we had the questions. I'd like to see which questions apply to which of these policies, to see if we're covering all of them, or if we have extra ones that don't fit, that maybe we don't need. Does that make sense?
You're talking about the
Say
old
it again.
policy?
Okay, so last time we did the tip, we had the, was it 13 questions, or I want to take those 13 questions, see how they apply to each of these regulations,
I see.
and see if there's balance, if we have any that don't fit into one of these, to see if it's really necessary or not.
Okay.
It's the 13 relate to the goals, and that's what makes it necessary, is we have to show that our tip comes from our plan. So we need to
those
use the
related
same
to the
criteria.
long-range plan,
It's the
not the
13
tip.
criteria from the plan.
Okay. Okay.
So we also have the second item, which is provide a separate pot of money for small projects. Are we done with number one, kind of that discussion? Do we want to discuss item number two? Does anybody else have any thoughts on number one?
No.
Okay. Well, then go
Okay.
ahead and discuss number two.
Yeah. we discussed this last month, if you all remember. We also brought it to the CAC. I think both committees had the same comment that this amount of money might not be, the cap might be too low. I think we said $300,000 would be the maximum that a small project could be. And so we were considering raising that. One of the concerns was a lot of smaller entities might not have the local match for a larger cap. So if they had a project for, if we said the cap was $1 million, a local entity might struggle to do the local match on that. So that was kind of one of the justifications for having the small projects between $0 and $300,000. But again, I just want to get everyone's thoughts again on this idea. If you think it's even worth having as a policy, and if you do, then maybe we want to consider adjusting what qualifies as a small project. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know if, were you here last month? Okay, well, I guess I can explain this policy one more time. So the idea, as I said, it's the defining a small project would be between $0 and $300,000, and it would encompass every level of the scope of work for that project. So you couldn't just say, I'm going to do the design phase, and that counts as my small project. You have to do the entire project within that funding amount. And what else was there? I guess that was the only other part of it. And the way we came up with $0 to $300,000 was we kind of sort of based it off of CDOT's level. They had safe routes to school, and they defined a small project between $50,000 and $350,000. So that's kind of how we ballparked that number. And so we're proposing to have this come out of STP Metro, and so it would be about 3% of that budget. And there's one other thing about it that I forgot. I think that's about it. And then if any money that's not used would just go back into the general fund for STP Metro. So. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I guess following on what you mentioned about safety, if there's, do we want to look at a third potential policy as a safety pool of money for Metro? So I don't know if that's make a safety project more competitive, but it's just throwing that out there.
Well, I was going to ask, do you have a kind of a sense for why did the smaller projects not end up actually comparing as well? I mean, obviously you have only so much flexibility about how you weight certain performance measures and criteria and so forth. So,
A lot of the small projects
really hit those.
No, safety would be a completely different set of projects, I assume. The reason small projects don't score generally is small projects don't relieve a lot of congestion, which is a pretty weighted category. A lot of them aren't safety projects. There's, unless you can show, like you're putting a bike trail in and there's been bicycle accidents there, you're not relieving, so much safety. So they're just, they don't hit enough categories. They're not big enough to get across all the categories.
I'm trying to remember the last tip. I'm not sure we had a ton of the smaller type projects either, though.
Yeah. Well, they weren't submitted.
Yeah.
It's almost like not worth it.
I was just going to say, but the last tip, while I commend us on the collaborative, the only projects that would have gotten funded were the big ones, because with what Craig said, we can't compete.
Yeah, had we not collaborated, you wouldn't have gotten anything.
Manitou wouldn't have gotten anything. So, I commend us, like I said, to do that, but I would support this, but I would support it bumping that cap level up.
Mm-hmm.
From my standpoint, I don't know that we would have a project that was small enough to really still compete in the small pool.
Mm-hmm.
But
What number? 500,000?
I would throw out a million.
It's hard to say millions of small projects.
Yeah.
So,
If we did a half $500,000, then the Rainbow Falls Bridge would be a small project, and CDOT could paint it.
With your money, we'd be happy to paint it.
You normally get our money anyway, right?
Well, maybe it's somewhere under $1 million, because I can see where you might just have something that's just over 500,000 though. I mean, and really, I mean, usually when we look at a project, even if it's a small project, you know, just because it has the federal process attached to it, you know, there's a cost to that. And, you know, usually we're not even looking at a project to bring in to submit.
Right.
That's,
We avoid it.
yeah,
That's what I told Jack.
under 250 to 300,000. I mean, you probably want it to be at least $1 million or $500,000. So, but I think it's definitely something that we should probably think of, because there are those smaller projects that you're right. I mean, we have that issue too, even though we're a larger entity competing against.
I'm just wondering, what kind of project are we looking at for 500,000, and that isn't covered by TAP monies? You know,
Could be an intersection, putting a signal up.
could be a signal.
Could be a safety improvement.
I just funded a $500,000 intersection improvement. Well, it's actually over $500,000, so it's like, and it's a small intersection. So I'm not sure how much you can get with 500,000, to be honest.
But even $500,000 of STP Metro for a block of sidewalks in Palmer Lake, I mean, you could probably do a lot in a small community for that amount of money.
That's TAP money. I mean, that could be covered by TAP.
Yeah, but it's another source to help the local governments compete a little bit better too.
Wendy?
You know, and something else, as you're all aware, they're working on a pilot program out of our headquarters office to be able to take the federal nexus out of some of those small type projects that we're talking about here now. So as time goes forward, we may have some direction and answers on whether or not this is going to be a really lucrative process for the smaller communities, because if they don't have to do all the contracting issues and all the bells and whistles that the federal money comes with, then they can take that money and spend it as if it were in their own coffers, then they don't have that overhead that they have to work with. So as time goes on, we'll know more, but it's just an idea that maybe this is a good pairing of that process.
Wow, it would be amazing to see federal regulations actually get flexible.
well, no, the federal regulation would be flexible. CDOT would be the flexible.
CDOT would be flexible. Okay, thank you, CDOT, then.
Yeah, it wouldn't be, so we're just changing the
I
color
knew I
of the
had to
money.
have been crazy in there, but it couldn't be the federal government.
Yeah, no,
getting
they're actually
flexible.
they're getting worse. But CDOT's saying, it's gotten so bad that CDOT's saying, well, you know what, well, since we are going to do it with the federal money anyway, we'll just use all of our federal, we'll take the federal money that own us, we'll give you the state money that doesn't have it. So that'd be awesome if it works out.
Some states have done completely.
Yeah.
Well, I agree that 300 or 350 is too low. At least 500,000.
Any objection to putting planning studies back into this category, since we got rid of the planning
That was going to be my suggestion.
criteria or the planning pot of money?
That was going to be my suggestion as well, so.
It is a small project,
Yeah.
you can generally get them for less than 500,000,
Yeah.
and it is sort of the whole phase of the project, but.
Correct.
Yeah, me too.
I think that's a great thing.
You're saying put a separate pot of money for planning studies, or have it be part of the small?
It
Part
could
of
be a
the
small
small-
project.
Okay.
The planning study would be defined as a small project.
Okay.
If it were less than 500,000.
Got it. Okay.
So, for instance, if you have a historic area and you need to know exactly what that footprint is going to cost you to be able to do some sort of improvement to it, but you don't have an extra $100,000 sitting in your budget, this would work out nice to be able to apply for that type of project, to be able to have somebody give you that footprint and what would be necessary.
Okay. Yeah.
Because some of that stuff is very labor intensive, and you have to farm it out sometimes to be able to get what you need to know.
Yeah.
So it'd be perfect.
One other thing to consider that I forgot to mention, So we said 300,000 for small projects would be the cap, and then we proposed setting aside a total of $600,000. So the idea was to at least get one small project done per year, or 2 small projects done every call for projects. So one thing to consider is how many small projects do you want to try to get done every year. That would be another thing to consider. So if you were to say a small project is $500,000, then you would want to say, do you want to set aside only $500,000 and get one project done, or do you want to set aside $1 million and try to get 2 projects done? That'd be another thing to consider. I think I mentioned setting aside $600,000 would be about 3% of the SCP Metro budget. So it really depends on how much of the budget you want to take out for this. So
If you think we could actually get, we could get 3 or 4 with 500,000.
yeah, you could. I'd definitely do that if they were smaller. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The only con, and I'm just balancing this list out because you can't take a proposal out without a con and everything can't be rosy, but the only con is that it takes a chunk of money out of the 20 years. It takes a chunk of money out of our fiscally constrained plan. I want to say it's probably, 20 million or something, 10 million? So
yeah.
it is equal over the long term to a serious big project, but I'm not saying I'm not for it. I'm just saying put a con in there.
Okay.
Well, I also think, I mean, when we kind of had put some money into some of those, when we had kind of made some pots previously, we kind of did that as a guideline and said, we want some of those projects. So we said maybe 5%, but we didn't hold ourselves to that, so that if a project came in and it was, $50,000 over, we weren't going to say no. You know what I mean? So I think it's good to kind of give ourselves some guidelines, maybe 3 to 5%, but not hold hard and fast, because if you have some really good projects that score well and maybe you're at 6% of the overall, you don't want to discount that project.
I like that. You can put approximately X%, whatever
Yeah.
that number is.
I just would hate to put ourselves in a box, especially if there are 3 great projects from, small communities or even a large community, 3 great small projects, and we want to fund them, and or maybe $100,000 over that percentage, doesn't make sense to say no. I guess I would suggest a percentage, an approximate percentage.
Okay. So more like a range, through a percentage or something like that? Okay.
That's not good.
I don't see a problem just putting approximately 3%.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think you have to put a range.
Michael, you go through more computers than anybody I know.
Any other further discussion about that item?
So that would be for small projects and/or planning studies.
Planning studies?
Planning and safety studies?
Planning and safety.
Planning, safeties, same
Well,
thing.
I was thinking that, safety project, if it could qualify as a small project.
Or you could do a safety planning study and, it's 6 to 1.
Any other further discussion?
Let's get rid of that note policy.
Jennifer did a good job of bringing that up yesterday.
Yeah, I mean.
How did it go over?
Crickets.
Sorry, I missed it.
Wow. Well, I just briefly, the point was, and I think that they didn't say anything because they know that that's an issue. And they accept it and they've seen it. We've seen construction costs here go up at least 20%, so I don't think it's anything new to most of those elected officials, so.
Right.
It's not surprising that I didn't get any comments.
And I think also that some of the reason why there was no further comment is that there's some key people that were missing from around the table yesterday as well. So.
There were people missing yesterday? Sorry.
Well, then, let's throw it out for discussion then, get rid of that note policy, due to the crazy fluctuations in construction costs. Can't hurt to take it to the board.
The only problem you have with that, again, is that sometimes you go too far out with how you make your call for projects. So you can't really access the money to get it to where you need it without going through a major reorganization of the TIP. But again, that is a decision that you can make on your own. I'm just, again, a con versus the the process. So just keep that in mind as you go forward. And if you do go to a 2-year call for projects, and you start at a certain point where you have 1 year of projects already in place, then you start making that process happen, then you'll be in a better place if you do it on a 2-year basis versus 6, honestly. So it'll help you get to that point where if you know that you need extra money, you can switch something else around and get that project to the last year so that you can take that new complement and put it together and make it work.
I in part bring it up because it was clear to me at the at the last CAC meeting, that CAC members do not understand this process of applying for money, and the fact that we're really taking, best educated guesses at totals when we're submitting these projects, when we know they're 6 years out, they haven't been designed, we don't know what right-of-way, and they clearly do not understand that. And I feel like this note policy is sort of an outshoot of that they don't understand that we're taking these guesses, and then when we get to actually putting it down on a piece of paper, we go, holy moly, we need another $800,000. That's in part why I bring it up.
Right.
Is some of that due to the fact, we're calling for projects, this is be 2023 and 2024 will be our next, and that's, 5 years out. We have to have a 4-year tip, but I'm not sure if the last 2 years of that have to be specified to projects, or if it can be in pools. Do we want to look at not doing the full 6 years? Because it's not federally required. Federal is only 4, and I'm not sure, like I said, the last 2 even have to be specified to projects. So we could.
6 years out, it's hard to guess numbers for projects. It's hard.
Well, the other part of that, and CDOT deals with this all the time, so it's not just a local entity thing. You identify a need or a project, and then you actually design it, and then you actually have good numbers. And I think that's, it's not just a local jurisdiction. So, Craig?
Well, and CDOT also has the Transportation Contingency Funds, so that's another thing is instead of booking 100% of the funds for every year, maybe we book 90% and keep a 10% contingency in every year, so that because these are going to come up, that they can access that. The issue is, back when we very first started, so 12 years ago, when we started using cost effectiveness as a criteria, some of the entities, none of the representatives who did it are here, seriously underestimated project costs. Project scored extremely well. Got to time to implement the project, needed twice as much money. So.
Well, I think at that point, and that's the other point I was going to get to, because I look at the current TIP policy, and the discussion about that is in that policy, and I get it, but
Yep.
I think at that point, then, if the local entity is asking for additional money, you better believe that you're going to have to explain why.
Well, and it was just,
There should be a good explanation.
So,
Anyway. Because I would expect if another entity is asking for more money, that they have a good explanation for why. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think most entities are submitting projects that way anymore, just to try and, because I don't think cost effectiveness in our criteria is as weighted as much as it was back then. My thought.
Interesting.
Anyway. Tim, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, I would say that I don't support not programming at least 5 years out. We have a 5-year CIP in our budget office, and they forecast, they look at the TIP and what they have to budget for future local match. And if we don't put it in there, then it goes elsewhere.
So what about like a 10% per year set aside for contingency?
I wouldn't mind something that says, when we're developing a new TIP, do we need to look at our current cost estimates and adjust them? If we're doing that every 2 years, then that.
I see.
I need to think
That's
about
when
this one
that's when we
more.
know what the inflation impact is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you need some sort of criteria, though. If you have the 10% set aside, which I'm not opposed to, but you have to have some sort of,
Why?
yeah, criteria as to who gets it and when, because everybody's gonna want it, and I just have to think about this one more. Sorry, I brought it up, my fault.
And I agree, but Wendy, there's a process at CDOT. For example, at some point when you bid a project, you know, first of all, you have to have your cost estimate be within 10% of, to actually bid the project. So that's one safeguard location where if the local entity doesn't have enough money, that's when red flags are going to go up. But the second part is that you bid a project and it's not coming in, you know, as needed. I mean, good example is that Rainbow Falls Bridge. They had to bid it 3 times, and they still had to go back and get extra money. So, but the point is that I don't think we should constrain ourselves so that we can't get a project done that we've already spent a bunch of money doing design right away and NEPA clearance, and then not be able to finish the project. That doesn't make any sense.
So what we do at that point is if we have our engineering estimate, we're within our 10%, we put it out, and it comes back that it doesn't work. I'll give you an example here, Lamar. So we thought when we put this estimate together, they would bring in the batch plant for the pavement. We're putting concrete pavement through the middle of town to continue with that 287 route for the trucks, for the big truck traffic that goes through the middle of Lamar. So we thought that they'd bring the resources to us because that job was big enough that they would do that. Well, all of the bidders that came in and put bids in did not do that. So it escalates the cost by a substantial amount when you have to haul it in. So with that being said, so you have an exception to the rule. So what do you do with that? So one, we went through and we can't cut the scope because it is what it is. So we had to go through and reprioritize. So we took money out of the Southeast TPR and other projects and moved it here. And then we went to the Transportation Commission for the balance of what that need was going to be because we have no other place to take it from. So you need to have some place to take it from when those kind of things happen. And so that needs to be part of a policy that's put together so that when you have those kind of exceptions, that there's a way to fix it without having to gut the project or scale it back to the point that you can never build anything that's going to give you the results you need to be able to meet your requirements for your TIP and your long-range plan. Because if you're putting money on the ground for something that isn't going to amount to anything, FHWA is not going to give you 1180 clearance either, so.
Yep.
So we need to figure out some way of coming up with a policy that says, when we have a big oops, how do we fix it?
Well, and that's not really an oops. It's just
Well,
the market
but for the lack of, for the lack of not.
Craig, how do other MPOs, I mean, I know that Dr. Cog and North Front Range have to deal with this, I'm sure.
Differently, and actually Dr. Cog just went out and did a survey of MPOs around the country to figure theirs out. This is one of the issues. So that's one of my notes is to get the tip call stuff from Dr. Cog so that find out what.
Send it out too, it would be
Yeah.
interesting.
So, and I think it's different. One of the things that Dr. Cog, actually, we found out on Tuesday that they're talking about is creating a 2-tiered system, regional projects, regionally significant projects, and then locally significant projects.
Oh, I wish we had that kind of money.
So, yeah, well, that's the thing is with the money they get in, they can do that and actually get real projects in both categories,
Yeah.
so.
That would be nice.
My thoughts on this, if you look at the engineering news record nationwide, it's, over the years, it's typically 3 to 5% annually. So I wouldn't have a problem recommending we put in a 5% per year as a contingency. And, but 10% I think is a little bit high, but, and then we can adjust, but at least you can just look at the engineering news record and you're going to have at least 3% over.
Well, yeah, the Colorado Construction Index, we track that on a quarterly basis, and yeah, it's quarterly it goes up and down. I think third quarter is when you want to bid projects, based on what I've seen.
That's why we do that.
Okay, so, but yes, we track the CCI
Yeah, so
So maybe we can build in whatever the CCI.
maybe you build in
Inflation, yeah,
CCI
say-
inflation or something.
Yeah, build in the CCI and say, you
That
know
would
what?
give us the flexibility with the small project pool too, because between the two of them, we'd be able to, different years, one year maybe it's more contingency, the next year maybe it's more small projects, depending on how things come in. It would give us that flexibility that we need.
But if you link it to a construction cost index, the board will probably be more acceptable of that rather than just putting a number out.
Well, I'm kind of hearing, I mean, although that may be taken care of different ways, I'm kind of hearing a thought that maybe there is some thought to trying to get away from the flat note policy and build in some flexibility. Head nod, yes or no? Okay.
That's a vigorous head nod, Bob.
All right. So I guess food for thought for PPACG staff as we bring these items.
Definitely.
So Kevin, you have all those notes?
I have the video, so I'll be rewatching that. But I'll actually try to do some research the next few weeks and figure out what Dr. Cog found and try to present that next month for this. See if we can find some other ideas for the note policy. But
Thank you. So there's a couple other policies on there, and I don't know if people have really had a chance to take a look at them about current TIP policies. I don't know if anybody else wants to discuss some of those other ones.
So I'd like to discuss the tip delay. I don't think we don't have any flexibility there.
We have the weakest tip delay policy in the country right now. True statement, so.
And you know, the one thing now is not so much that you have a tip delay policy here in the organization, is FHWA's trigger now with the end
Super
dates
circular,
and
yeah.
super circulars.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
hair
your
trigger.
that's your biggest driver now. It's not necessarily the process and the policy here.
So I guess to that then, I mean, do we need a separate tip delay policy if we're constrained by the super circular and that? I mean,
We only did a tip delay policy when Federal Highway said you had to do one.
sure.
We were the last ones in the country, and this was the minimum bar we could get away
Okay.
with. So,
So maybe that's a conversation you could have with Aaron, if you can just replace that information with what came out of super circular and what the process is there, then you don't have to have two separate processes, and people will have a better idea of what they're up against.
but we would still have to, or we'd have to have a policy that then describes the to super circular, and I just
I
hate
just
that
say
one.
the 1180, the authorization, I think it's really simple and straightforward. I think we could do that. I think we could.
I would just want to leave it as it is, because it's like you said, it's, our tip policy is not going to get triggered. It's going to be the federal 1180 stuff that does it anyway, so this meets the requirements, and it is less work to not do anything, to be honest.
Any other discussion on this item?
It's quite enough.
Moving on. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks.
thank you. I'll bring it back one more month for discussion, and then we'll probably be ready to make a recommendation after that. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Number 9, long-range transportation plan schedule, discussion item.
Yes.
Mr. Casper.
And I'm going to come up here, this will be, I think, the 7th time in 12 years I'm doing a PowerPoint, but I'm actually not doing a PowerPoint. I'm going to do the PDF version of it, just on principle. So, schedule, so there we go. Okay, so we're laying out our 2050, our next plan, 2050 plan, and laying out the process. And it's going to be a 3-ish year schedule. The rest of this calendar year, talk about the schedule, which is now public participation plan, which we talked about that, and we're going to start the small area forecast. Starting the small area forecast will be internal. It's us getting data together, getting 2015 data, things like that. Actually, the actual other parts of it, technical parts of it, will happen in 2017. Also in 2017, look at goals, performance measures, the environmental justice, making sure we know where those EJ populations are, because that is a huge federal emphasis right now. we're getting ready, we're going to be doing our quadrennial certification next June, and in prep for that, I requested what the questions Federal Highway is asking around the country, and the gotcha questions are all EJ things. So we're going to prep for that. 2017, we'll start the scenario development parts, start doing some of the safety analysis. Like I said, I talked to Jennifer a little bit. We got the safety analysis tool we have is outstanding, so we'll start some of that. Needs assessment, that, if it gets started in 2017, will be at the very end of 2017. Depends on how the scenario development goes. And then weighting criteria for analysis, again, that'll be at the very end of 2017. 2018, that's when we start looking at actual projects and analyzing projects. And then 2019, looking at actually having a list of projects, and then analyzing how well our list of projects achieves the federal performance metrics. A tricky bit is we're going to get new, well, theoretically, new federal legislation right in the middle of this, and they've shown less tolerance for grandfathering as the stuff goes forward. So this is all with the aimed at meeting the FAST requirements. So planning to plan, we're going to use the FHWA PlanWorks framework. It's on their website. It lays out the different steps. It's pretty straightforward. These are the steps that we see as key. These are not all long-range plan steps from the PlanWorks. Some of what we do are from programming, like the way we do with CDOT, the resource allocation actually uses the step as described for TIP programming, where you identify specific dollar amounts for the thing, so we'll work with that. Also, with our CMP study, we use some of the steps in the quarter planning. So what you see there as you go around, so they're long-range plan 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you get quarter step 2, long-range plan step 5, or programming step 1, because it's the same. Programming step 2, quarter step 3, long-range plan 7, quarter 4. So, and that's sort of as you go around the circle and clockwise, starting at the 9 o'clock hour. That's sort of the order we see it happening in. The top left quadrant steps, long-range plan 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's what we hope to accomplish in 2017. So that'll be next year. With then the other steps accelerating through 2018, and in 2019 is when we're looking for adoption. So the public participation plan is out for comment now. It's how we're going to reach out to our target audiences. It's out for its 45-day public comment. For our small area forecast, we're transitioning to Urban Sim. It's more rigorous. It's more modern. It's not gravity-based. It's got a lot more oomph to it. We hope to be taking ownership of that very soon in federal fiscal year 2017, so sometime October, maybe November next month, to start working with it. We're data collection and scrubbing is what we're at now. We have collected all of the data we need. We think we've collected all the data we need. Start running the model then later this year, early next year, and trying to figure out the small area task force, small area forecast task force, sort of get that going. December, January might be optimistic based on some of the other things are sliding. So heavy lift in 2017, going out to the public for goals, making sure that the 13 we have are reflective. FAST defines 11, so 11 of the 13 we have to have, including, by the way, stormwater now. Federal requirement, we have to have stormwater. I didn't understand transportation and stormwater, but it is. Public outreach, going out, Facebook ads, trying to drive people to our website. We're going to try to be as electronic as we can. Higher tech versus higher touch is what Rachel calls it. But she's gone now, or will be, so I can call it anything I want. We're going to come up with multiple plausible...
Not in the room or leaving?
Leaving.
No.
Yep. Regional Business Alliance offered her way more money.
Oh, she was so good. She
Yep.
is so good.
Yep. So we're still going to stay with the multiple scenarios. We're going to probably take a little different tack on that. Federal Highway just put out how they think scenarios should be done. It's the 750 series, I think is what it's called. It's really good, and they've actually worked out some stuff to 2050 base that you can just take things out and plug it in. And they also have the Beyond Traffic series that talks about a lot of the autonomous vehicles, things like that, which Uber is running autonomous vehicles now in Pittsburgh. So I think they are probably going to actually happen. So how we deal with some of those type issues will be covered in this plan. Explored that is technological demographic trends. The demographic trends that Federal Highway is emphasizing is the graying and browning of America, the declining middle class, and something else. So, we'll look at that. Again, we'll identify the needs in the region based on goals and scenarios. So then we'll identify those before our call for projects so you know where the needs are for regional needs. Identify the potential costs. We'll probably use some sort of cost standard. Adding a lane is $1 million a mile or something to come up with what our regional need financial is. EGA analysis, we have to, USDOT, not only do we have to make sure that we're not disproportionately impacting low-income minority, we have to make sure that they are participating in the process and they are receiving benefits equal to or greater than the benefits received by non-low-income and minority populations. That's the gotcha stuff. So, safety plan, we have the, it's called Vision Zero Suite to do crash analysis. It's awesome. We'll weight criteria. So we'll use a very similar process to what we've done in the past. Projects 2018, we'll look at developing the applications. Call for projects March to June of 2018 is when we're looking at scoring. Analysis July to January to make sure that we're getting a good list of projects, July, January 2019. We'll score projects under all the scenarios. It's a risk assessment sort of deal. Make sure 2019 we'll try to get it all assembled, have some good discussions, and we're aiming September of 2019 for board approval, which gives us a little tiny bit of a cushion, like 1 month. So. Performance metric, I don't remember what it, so, oh, yeah, performance, after we get the whole package of projects assembled, then we have to judge how our plan is going to, how close we're going to get to achieving the goals and see if there's anything we can do to get better. But that's per FAST Act, and it'll be done by then. It won't, so by the time we get there, the rules will have changed. August, September 2019 is draft plan. September, October, public comments, air quality, which we don't have to do, well, we shouldn't have to do air quality conformity at all. We should be completely out of it by then and not receiving CMAQ in November final approval. Any questions?
Victoria.
Are we not updating the non-motorized plan in the CMP?
The CMP, they will be updated, but it's not going to be as big a lift as we just went through. It'll be more, like for the non-motorized plan, we'll check in with the city's bike plan, we'll check in with the county's major thoroughfares plan to see what else, to supplement the base plan that we've got now. We're not going to go out and do the whole big build again. CMP will be updated. Those are the quarter steps that are in there. We have to do a little more specificity in our quarter plans than we have done in the past. We don't know the extent of that yet because the rules are not final. But it should be pretty straight. What I think, it's the safety again, and I think will be easy. It'll be a lot easier for us to do it with the safety tools that we have. This intersection is a level 4. This one's only a level 2, so it's not a problem. So I think it's just like highlighting safety issues and travel speeds. And I think that might be the only big changes we have to do to our CMP. So. Any other questions?
No, let Dwayne go, I got more.
On a lighter note, are we going to have a special fund for autonomous Mass transit.
Actually, maybe not for that, but the, looking at what's going on, Metro funding to enhance the infrastructure to make autonomous vehicles operate better, better striping, better signals, like stoplights have to have a reflective frame around them now with the red, yellow, and green. That people are doing that to make their infrastructure more autonomous vehicle friendly. That is actually what people are doing. So it's a lighter note, but it could be really expensive. Some of the, especially with the way striping gets just burned off here. You know, it's a lot easier in Florida or places than it is in the mountains. So anyway.
It's because of that environmentally friendly paint we have to use.
Yeah. We need lead paint. That's what. Sorry.
Do we have a hard and fast, like one of those must have it done by deadlines?
November 2019
And that's being driven by you guys?
by feds.
By the feds? So say it's November when?
2019. No, December 20. We adopted it in January 2015, right? When did we adopt it? It's 4 years after our last adoption.
11/15.
11/15, so then November 2019. So it is November 2019. So, yep, it's still that.
Okay.
That's what drives our hard and fast deadline.
But it seems like we always get a federal
Yeah.
change right in the middle. Can't we coordinate those on a federal level?
Right after my disaster.
Exactly.
Coordinated plan disaster. Anybody else?
More questions?
All right, I'm going. It looks like you have the development of evaluation criteria, goals, and measures all at the same time.
Oh, well, it's happening in the same year, but it will happen linearly. So we need to know the goals before we can do the measures and that stuff. So the first thing we'll be checking in with is goals, making sure that people are happy with goals.
All right, and then can you have somebody come in at some point and give us a presentation on the urban sim and other of the new parts of the model so that we
Yep.
have a good understanding of what the heck it is we're
We
looking
can
at?
totally do that.
Thank you. That'd be awesome.
And we've been talking, Paul Waddell's the urban sim developer. We've been talking with him, and we're actually going to be the first users of one of his new urban sims. So we've been talking with him about, we're getting our handheld through it.
And it makes it even more important to have a good
Right.
understanding of what it is we're using.
Exactly. So, yeah, we can totally do that.
Thank you. I'm done.
Tim?
So you're taking our comprehensive plan update. You're doing your small area forecast in 20 this year?
Carl and I have been talking about that. Yes. And we are going to be stepping all over each other's toes, and we're trying to figure out what to do about it. So,
So you guys are talking.
yeah, we actually have a meeting October, this TAC Day, the morning of TAC Day in October, because that's the next time the consultants are coming in town. So, to try to figure out, because we're going to be doing scenario forecast and scenarios all at the same time that you guys are doing what's the future of our city look like? So,
I just know, I think that our Executive Director of Development Services is also looking at trying to look at our master plans for land use
okay,
in the county, that there's lots of small.
enclaves.
We have small areas.
Small
Oh, yeah, we have all of them upstairs, but
Yeah.
they're old. Are those the newest?
Yes. So he's looking at trying to do an overall county-wide.
Okay.
plan. So I just,
Yeah.
I'm not
Well, we
sure
can.
where he is with that.
Okay. Well, we should invite him when we do the urban sim thing to this, so he can see what stuff we can do. So, okay. Any other questions?
We'll be developing a transit plan.
Yeah.
and-
Thank you. And we actually have to work on our MOA.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that we need to get done before June, I think. We have to do a MOA with CDOT and an MOA with you all, preferably before certification, so we can say, hey, I've done it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
Oh, and had I not had a computer, I would not have been able to read your schedule. Is there a way to break
Yeah.
that down so we can actually read it?
Th-
Because
that's-
I printed it, and I even printed it on 11 by 17,
Let
and I
me
was
see.
like, got my magnifying glass out and my magnifying glasses and still couldn't read it.
That's actually our internal one, and it was one of those, it's like, oh, just send it out, because we got to go now. Yeah, it'll be different.
Track our
More of a
schedule
summary
or
one, yeah.
Something.
But
I
that-
don't find the format, I just needed it
Bigger. Yes. So, any other questions? Then I can do item 10 also.
CDOT priority list, is this the?
Yep.
Additional item?
And so this is, as of yesterday, the list, and the key, so these are Colorado Springs, so 30, 40, no, this isn't it. That's a critical freight. There it is. Okay, this is better. So Greater Denver, their project on Monument to C-470, so they did extend it all the way to C-470, but then they took out the managed lanes verbiage. So now they're saying it is going to go all the way to C-470, not stop at the 4-lane where it was 4 to 6, but we're not. It's not just managed lanes. We'll look at other things too. Although, how much, the level of detail on that non-managed lanes will be dependent on later stuff. So we're also working with CDOT to make sure that we get representatives from our area are on the technical committee. So that's all the Region 1. Region 2, Pueblo. Yeah, see, even in alphabetical order, we should go first. Sorry, personal peeve. So the funding, we're looking at 65 for the I-25 HOV. Tier 1, also Tier 1 is US 24 West at 105. 24 or US 24 West, I-25 to Ridge. Nothing. So the Tier 1 high priority are these projects. And these are adding in the secondary corridors. I literally got this right before the meeting, so I haven't added the numbers up. But it's the 1535 is the other thing, is still as the TAC recommended last month. So I wanted to give this is hot off the presses. Given this, the original discussion about the new item was to make sure that the whole breadth of the PEL was not limited to managed lanes. The CAC made a recommendation to that, but so it's tax pleasure if you'd like to make a recommendation. But like I said, the new definition is just mobility and safety improvements from Monument to C-470 based on the PEL currently underway.
So last month, we did make a recommendation, and essentially
That
the
will-
only
yep.
thing that's changed is this verbiage.
Right.
which
So.
We did discuss as well.
Yep.
So I don't know if we want just to reconfirm that recommendation
Yep.
with the revised language.
Yeah, the recommendation that the TAC made last month was the $35 million on the I-25 project and $15 million on US 24 West. And that's how it sits right now. So just, again, verifying that. But if you don't make a recommendation, that'll go forward like that to the board, so.
Anybody have a preference?
Does anybody have a preference? Well, if you do, you need to make a motion.
Let her ride.
Maybe that's easy. Yeah, get her done.
Yeah. Alrighty. Thanks, Craig, for bringing
Yep.
that, though. Member entity announcements. Craig has one. Miss Rachel Beck is leaving.
Yeah, so I actually have two. Both our policy communications manager, Rachel, Friday, tomorrow is her last day, and then a week from tomorrow is our webmaster's last day. So our website is going to be also potentially issue ridden. So as we get, Eric has been our webmaster and our internal editor, and she's leaving a week from tomorrow. So.
Anybody else?
Leaving? Those two.
Well, any other member entity announcements?
Go ahead, Michael.
Your hand's up.
Okay. We have our draft major transportation corridor out on the website for comment. We have a little survey that goes on with it. You can go to epcroadplan.com/continued-project progress. Was that clear enough? Let me say it again. epcroadplan.com/continued-progress. And please take our survey and let us know what you think about our draft plan.
I took those that you sent me, and one's in Palm Lake Post Office and one's in our office.
Awesome, thank you. Did you have anything else? No, do you want to say something about Baptist? Oh, okay, never mind.
I guess I could. The county submitted a project to APWA for this year's awards, and we did receive Project of the Year for the Baptist Road West project.
Sweet.
And I think
Congratulations.
CDOT Region 2 also received, I don't know, Wendy,
Fillmore.
Fillmore.
Okay.
The Fillmore DDI for large transportation project of the year, I believe.
Congratulations.
So even when we do things that people don't like, sometimes it works out to the best interest of the community.
Amen. Anything?
We don't think about that around here, do we?
I'll speak kind of for Wade, but also for ourselves, but there's going to be a overlay project starting on Monday on Manitou Avenue, so west of the 24 overpass, pretty much up to their downtown district. And that's going to require us to have a detour on our Route 3 because the Garden of the Gods Place Bridge will be redone, or the bridge deck repaired, and I think some stormwater improvements in that section there, but it's going to have a bunch of ADA ramps put in along there, and so that section's going to be in good shape when it's done. I think by December, later in the year. So, and I think mid-November we'll be able to go back to our normal routing on Route 3, but that'll be a good project.
Yeah, so I just wanted to tell this group about one of the efforts that the statewide planning group, CDOT, has been developing and putting on sort of statewide. It's a program called Together We Go. It is based on the notion and a lot of the feedback that was received over years past about statewide planning being sort of a episodal type of thing that only happens when you're getting ready to develop a new plan, and that planning needs to be more ongoing and continuous and that sort of thing. So, the statewide planning group has been, has asked for feedback. You've heard of the Lessons Learned initiative, where we actually asked for feedback on the statewide planning processes and so forth. And Together We Go is another effort to have sort of regular ongoing conversations, but different in that we are making presentations to groups around the state. And in that presentation, we're just sharing what are the plan priorities identified in your area, what kind of progress has been made on the plan in your area, and what kind of things are coming up, and then asking for feedback on just general planning progress. How is CDOT doing? Are we on track to implement the plan as it was envisioned? Are there adjustments or priority changes that need to be made, that sort of thing? Are there new safety issues that are arising? It's an ongoing conversation, and I had a sort of a slideshow to share with you today. I don't think it's fully necessary, but what I wanted to tell you is that we have this as a means to actually further the conversation beyond groups that are normally involved with planning. So those of you that are on the TAC here, this is your profession. This is what you do all the time. So you're in this conversation. It is very difficult, as you know, to sometimes get that conversation to groups who normally don't come to these typical type of meetings. So the presentation is put together in a way to be very simple, and that can be modified or customized for anybody to take to any venue of any stakeholder group possible. So we're inviting local officials, transportation professionals, et cetera, to take this conversation to your city council boards, to business groups, to any other type of interested groups that you're familiar with or interface with on a regular basis. We want to work with you to make that possible. We can take the conversation there. I am actually going to make this presentation to your CAC,
So I've not been to a CAC meeting here before, and I think it's a group that probably doesn't hear quite as much about planning concepts as you do. So I hope that they find value in it, and that they sort of take us up on the invitation to maybe extend the conversation elsewhere. I will say that conversation also includes some of the concepts that we all talk about around funding scarcities, a little bit about where our funding comes from. That's a lesson that I think everybody everywhere in the community probably could use some more information on. So there's some good information in there, and anyway, if you have questions about that, please let me know, or if that is a kind of a conversation you want to have brought to your council board, your boards, your counties, what have you, please let me know, and we'll help you make that happen.
That's a good idea.
Good?
Is that a presentation you do want to make to our board too, or just the CAC?
We can make it to the board if you think that would be beneficial, absolutely.
I don't know. We may get with Rob and just let him see the slides and stuff so we can see the topic.
Yeah.
Following the presentation.
Yeah.
When it's taken place, we've done them with all the TPRs and some other groups, and it's ranged from 30 to 45 minutes. It's usually 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most of sort of presenting, and then it's conversation, including some actual questions like, what are you seeing in this, or give us feedback on this kind of this topic, and that can be, personalized or customized, however you see fit, sort of.
Do you want to either send it to Craig and have him put it on the website, or send it out to us so that we can see it and
Yeah.
decide where?
You bet. You bet.
Not that I haven't seen it, but.
When I send it to you, I will send the PowerPoint, because there's sort of presenter's notes in there, and keep in mind that it's presenter's notes that I would have made myself, and those can be customized even further. There's things in it that most of the TPRs have said need to be added, and that is that this presentation talks a lot about the statewide transportation, the statewide system. A lot of them have said, well, if we talk to a council, we all contend with our local roads and the county roads and what have you. It's not just the state system. Of course, everybody is suffering the same scarcity of funding, and a lot of it comes from the same place. So that's the kind of customization that we can do, for you if you want to share that in other venues.
Can you also talk about the national highway system?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Whatever you think is suitable, all right? I mean, you can only take it so far. It depends on your audience, right?
Yep.
You can't get too much in the weeds. We know how hard it is to really get into the real complexities of things, even the funding. I mean, I had questions about, tell us, how does the funding come to us? And if you look at just the funding streams and how does it get broken out to CDOT and counties and cities, even that is it's not so simple. You can kind of say it's this 60-40 split from CDOT to locals, but it's not even that simple. There's like two different streams that get split out in different ways, and
52% of CDOT's money is for the National Highway Performance Program, whether or not it's state-owned, as an example.
yeah. So I'll share it with you, Craig. Just
Okay.
Forward it on, and then let me know if you have questions or how we can help. Support you.
Sounds great. Anybody else remember any of the announcements? Items for future TAC meetings.
You will be seeing a TIP amendment, most likely on Rainbow Falls. Comments back on the public participation plan, Title VI and EJ. More discussion on the TIP policies.
Modeling presentation.
Oh, modeling presentation.
Future, not necessarily next.
Okay.
Anything else? Alrighty. Time for anything else before we adjourn, so speak now, forever hold your peace. So we're adjourned at 3:15. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Let me know if you do anything on what you see.
Yes.
There you go. That's what I said to you.